Chair recognizes Ms. Crockett.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. It's the faux outrage for me. It's as faux news that I'm hearing, because somehow you guys, and when I say you guys, I am referring to my Republican colleagues, pretend as if you are the heroes of the story. But let me remind you who set the House on fire. It was y'all. So let me go ahead and handle these receipts, because I know that I always have to have proof, even though I guess our education system is failing us, because it seems like facts don't seem to faze people that vote for y'all. But I'm going to do it anyway. So when we talk about debt, I'd ask for unanimous consent to enter into a record this article that says Donald Trump built a national debt so big, even before the pandemic, that it'll weigh down the economy for years.
Without objection, so ordered.
Thank you so much. In fact, it talked about the fact that he ran up our debt almost $8 trillion. It was estimated to be $7.8 trillion at that time. And this is it's actually the third biggest increase ever under any presidential administration. So I don't understand how y'all gonna play the heroes. I also want to just kind of be clear about some basic level setting of civics, because it seems like civics is evading us. And listen, Governor, I actually appreciate you. I know that in today's times, for whatever reason, if you got a D or an R in front of your name, it has to be all hostile. Listen, I am a former business owner. If I was not sitting in this seat, I would still have my law firm, but you know, we have rules, right? So I'm not allowed to practice law. I'm not allowed to do a lot of other things, because ethics decides that that's not really a good thing, to make sure that the American people can trust that I don't have any divided interest. In fact, we do that for people that run our treasury typically. So I'm curious to know if you have an elected treasurer in your state. And you do, actually.
We do.
I know you do, because I looked him up. And I'm curious to know. So it's my guess that he's the one that actually controls all of the treasury systems that you have, correct?
Some of the investments.
He controls some of the investments, but also monies that need to be disseminated by the state, that's done by him, correct?
Department of Management and the Treasurer's Office.
Okay, in the Treasurer's Office.
Two separate agencies.
Okay, but you have an agency that does that, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and as you are having this agency do that, these are people that have some sort of ethics that they have to follow, I'm sure. I'm going out on a limb, because I don't know how anything works in Iowa. I'm just being honest with you.
Yes.
Okay. Here is the deal. I want the American people to understand that Democrats are not against efficiency. In fact, the last time that this country actually ran to the extent that there was a balanced budget and actually there was a surplus, it was a Democrat in the White House. His name was President Clinton. So we are not against this. What we are against is this idea that we will evade the Constitution, or we will evade our own constitutional. In fact, it's not even an invasion. At this point, it feels as if y'all have just decided that y'all are going to castrate your constitutional duty and hand it over to someone who is unelected. It doesn't matter how many cheerleaders he had on the field campaigning for him. That doesn't mean that he gets to go in and sit atop any of our agencies. And the fact that we had a vote today and we asked to bring him in because we have a constitutional duty, we all took our oath, and maybe some of y'all just don't take it seriously, but I take it seriously when I take an oath to do a job, and my job is to look out and make sure that we don't have any kings or queens in this country. But it seems like y'all have decided that it's going to be Mr. King and his queen, and y'all can pick which one is which. But either way, I want to also talk about, Governor, I'm curious to know if you know the answers to these questions. Which party controls the White House?
Republican.
Which party controls the Senate?
Republican.
Which party controls the House?
Republican.
Is that about what the makeup is in Iowa?
Yes.
And that has allowed you to be able to get your agenda across, correct?
Yes.
And you haven't had to bring in somebody to basically usurp any types of norms, because you worked through the process, correct?
Well, I did executive orders,
Yes or no?
2080
Yes or no?
agreements, and then
Yes-
went to
yes
the
or no? Because
legislature
we've
as
only
well.
got
It wasn't all of the
I'm
above.
gonna reclaim my time because
All
I
of
only
the
got
above.
so much time left.
All of the
I
above.
also want to point out that you specifically talked about that you recently had 3 national declarations for disasters, and I want to enter into the record a unanimous consent. Trump moves to abolish FEMA, shift disaster response to states.
Without objection.
And my
so ordered.
final unanimous consent I'd ask says that Mike Johnson's budget plan is at risk of collapse, even though we know that y'all control all 3 levers of government. So if this is what y'all want to do, then go ahead and clean it up and fix it and just go through the process. And honestly, there's nothing that
Order.
we will be able to say about it.
Order.
And with that, I will yield.
Now recognize the gentlewoman from Texas, Ms. Crockett, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Mr. Talcove, I'm just going to go ahead and pick up where you left off really quickly. Just to be clear, the upgrades that you're talking about as it relates to our data processes, these aren't things that would be free, are they? They would cost some kind of money. Not looking for a number, but they will cost, correct?
Some are free and some would cost money.
Okay. All right. So I just want to leave it there because we've had a number of these hearings. So I do want to be clear, before the Trump administration came in, this committee did exist in the form of the Oversight Committee, and our task is to root out waste, fraud, and abuse. In that vein, we had a number of hearings, at least last term. I can't speak for any other term as I'm only in my sophomore term. And we dealt with improper payments. And interestingly enough, our chairwoman, who is so passionate about this today, she missed every single one of those improper payment hearings. But just to be clear, I was there. So I don't want anyone to believe that Democrats just come to work and don't plan to do work. In fact, I'm trying to figure out exactly what it is that the Republicans believe our
4 minutes and 17 seconds. That is how long Jasmine Crockett spoke before anyone at the committee dais attempted to interrupt her. 4 minutes and 17 seconds in a room that had, in the preceding hour and a half, interrupted Democratic members an average of once every 90 seconds. Nobody interrupted. Nobody raised a procedural objection. Nobody reached for a microphone. The room did the specific thing rooms do when someone is saying something that the people in it do not have a prepared response for. It went silent. And it stayed silent for 4 minutes and 17 seconds. Let me tell you exactly what she said, and why nobody said anything back. Crockett had been recognized for her standard 5-minute allotment. The topic before the committee was federal workforce restructuring, the specific set of agency reductions and personnel decisions that had been carried out over the preceding months under the coordination of the Department of Government Efficiency. DOGE. The organization whose public face and operational architect had not appeared before this committee. Had not appeared before any committee. Had submitted no testimony. Had answered no questions under oath. Had participated in no oversight proceeding of any kind despite overseeing personnel decisions that had affected more than 200,000 federal employees. Crockett opened with a question she did not direct at any witness. She directed it at the room. She said, "I want to know who gave Elon Musk the authority to fire people who work for the American public." She did not pause for an answer. The question was not a request. It was the first sentence of a 4-minute and 17-second answer she was about to give herself. She said, "I'm going to tell you who didn't give it to him. Congress didn't. There's no statute. I've looked. My staff has looked. We have spent a significant amount of time looking for the law that gives a private citizen with no confirmation, no oath, no Senate vote, and no accountability to this body the authority to terminate federal employees. We have not found it. Because it does not exist." The room was quiet. Not the quiet of agreement. The quiet of a space where the people who would ordinarily respond have calculated that responding requires engaging with a premise they would prefer not to have in the record. She continued. She said, "Elon Musk is a billionaire who has received more federal contracts than any private individual in the history of this country. He has received those contracts from the government he is now restructuring." I want the committee to sit with that sentence for a moment. The man restructuring the government is the same man whose companies depend on the government for their revenue. And he is doing the restructuring from a position that has no legal definition, no oversight mechanism, and no consequence for error. None. If he makes a mistake, and the record shows he has made several, nobody in this room can call him to account for it. He won't come. He hasn't come. We have asked? The answer has been no. She paused for the first time. 2 seconds. Then she said the word that every subsequent clip of this speech has isolated. She said, "That is what a coward looks like in a 3-piece suit and a DOGE badge." The room absorbed that sentence in the specific way rooms absorb sentences that are simultaneously factual in their components and incendiary in their construction. Nobody objected. Nobody called for a point of order. The chair looked at the dais. The dais looked at the chair. And Crockett continued as if she had said something entirely unremarkable, which in her framing she had. She said, "I am not here to talk about Elon Musk's feelings. I am here to talk about the 214,000 federal employees who got termination notices from a process that had no legal foundation, no due process mechanism, and no human being they could appeal to who was accountable to anyone in this government. Those are real people. They had real jobs. They were doing real work for the American public. And they were let go by a system designed by someone who will not sit in the chair at the end of this table and explain that system under oath." She looked directly at the empty witness chair at the end of the table. She let the look sit for 3 seconds. Everyone in the room looked at the same chair. She said, "That chair is empty because he chose not to fill it. This committee invited him. The invitation was declined. No explanation was offered. Just no. From a man whose operation has the practical authority of a federal agency and the accountability of none of them. No. He said no. To a Congressional Oversight Committee. And nothing happened. That is the part one need my colleagues across the aisle to explain to me. Because in every civics class taught in every school in this country, the part where Congress asks and the executive branch answers, that's not optional. But apparently if you're wealthy enough it is." The chair moved to speak. Crockett had 43 seconds remaining on her clock and she continued without acknowledging the movement. She said, "I am going to say this clearly for the record. Elon Musk restructured the United States government. He did it without legal authority. He did it without oversight. He did it while holding billions of dollars in federal contracts. He will not answer questions about it. And this committee, has not compelled him to. I want that in the record. Not as an accusation. As a fact. The facts are in the record. All of them. Adjacent to the empty chair. 4 minutes and 17 seconds. Then she said, "I yield back." The chair recognized the next member. The next member asked a question about budget line items. The hearing continued. But the 4 minutes and 17 seconds remained in the transcript. The empty chair remained in the transcript. The word coward remained in the transcript. All of it in the permanent record of a committee proceeding. Adjacent to the continued absence of the person it described. Here is what the silence meant. In a room that interrupts Democratic members once every 90 seconds, 4 minutes and 17 seconds of uninterrupted floor time is not a courtesy. It is the specific sound of a room that has assessed a speech in real time and concluded that the available responses are worse than silence. That engaging with the premise means putting the premise further into the record. That the empty chair at the end of the table is a more damaging rebuttal to any counterargument than the counterargument itself. They chose silence. And silence, in a congressional hearing room, is its own kind of answer. Leave your answer in the comments. Share this video so others understand what 4 minutes and 17 seconds of committee silence communicates, and what the empty chair at the end of the table was already saying before Crockett pointed at it. Subscribe because the formal follow-up to the declined invitation is already in motion, and what it produces will bring this committee back to the moment Crockett looked at that chair. The speech is in the record. The empty chair is in the record. The 4 minutes and 17 seconds of silence are in the record. And the word coward, stated as a factual characterization of a choice, not as an insult, is in the permanent transcript of a congressional oversight proceeding. He chose not to fill the chair. She made sure the record knows why that choice matters.